Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and it's time for this week's matchup show. We're going to talk about the defense on this one. And joining me for that, as always, is co-host Frazier Tafar. Frazier, how you doing?
Doing good, Ken. Glad to be back on a short week going against division rivals Cincinnati Bengals. I would say it's a tough matchup only because division game, but in terms of strength, I think this might not be too much of a sweater this week.
We are deep into election night as we record this at 12:44 a.m. right now on Wednesday, it's this is not an easy game if you're following Polymarket or following this game in terms of the changes in point spread and whatnot. You'll see that not everybody is convinced about the Bengals' quality on offense that could beat the Ravens, and about the Ravens' ability, even at home, to put this game away against the Bengals team that is seeming to be on its last death throes of the season right now. Do you agree with that? This is pretty much a do or die game for them.
Yes, and Burrow even mentioned, I think it was in the previous game, not this last one against Las Vegas, but the one prior to that, he stated they have to win the next 7 out of 9. Okay. They won last week's game. This is going to be one of those 2 losses, I'm assuming. So they're in do or die for sure. I think, like he's mentioned, they have 2 losses they can afford on the schedule. Everything else they have to win out. So this is do or die for them. And I'm happy to see them in this position. I think they're a franchise that has been in the bottom of the division for a long time and then get some quick success. And then all of a sudden they're this hot stuff, and it's good to see them go back to reality.
Yeah, honestly, it is. Sometimes they have a fan base that can be knowledgeable at times and is often annoying with regard to some recent playoff success. There seems to be a consistent negativity with all other of the big quarterback teams, whether that's the Chiefs, Buffalo, or Cincinnati in the AFC, in terms of who's got the better quarterback. Stroud doesn't even really seem to be in that discussion right now, and he could be someday, but the others are. And the teams just have intense rivalry over exactly that fact. That's not dissimilar to the Brady-Manning rivalry.
Yep, exactly. And something that is eye-opening with this quarterback generation is that out of nowhere, there was this new generation that stepped up in the 2017 and 2018 draft after wondering who's going to step up in for Brady, Manning, Breeze, Rodgers, all those guys. It's good to see the NFL in good hands moving forward. But now moving on to the matchups, I have my first matchup. Back to your point, the reason why I think people aren't convinced is because we have a weak pass rush. So my first matchup for tonight is Ravens pass rush versus Bengals pass pro. We have lacked 4-man pass rush in the past 3 weeks. KVN hasn't been able to show up. Oweh hasn't been there. The real contributor these last couple of weeks has been Tavius Robinson, out of all people. 2 sacks last week. I think he had a sack in the past 2 prior games. So this is going to be one of those matchups where we have to generate pass rush for Burrow. Last game we played against them, he had generally a clean pocket to play all day. The score showed that because he was making all the throws whenever he had the opportunity. So just trying to get Burrow off his spot, pulling the ball down is going to be the first key to the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's all good points here. I do think they need to force Burrow to move around off his spot, and I think they're probably not going to get there with the pass rush they've had. I don't have any real confidence that Travis Jones is going to be back, which will be the big difference maker they could add on the defensive line. Obviously, they won't get Pierce back for several more weeks at a minimum because he went on IR. They say it's not season ending. I'll take them at their word in Harbaugh in this case. But Travis Jones is absolutely the key to starting the engine on this pass rush again. When they have him, then they have a guy who commands double teams on the inside. If you don't double team him, beware, because he'll be right in the cone very quickly. And once they do double team him, it makes Madubuike more effective. It makes the outside, the edge guys more effective. And it forces the opposing offense, whoever they're playing, to use eligible receiver assets to try and help chip on those edge rushers. So Owe and Van Noy still have been effective as pass rushers, maybe not as effective as some people have hoped. The problem has really been recently on the inside that they're not getting any interior pressure, and that's why they're not getting to the quarterback or creating trouble. This last week, 22 ample time and space opportunities for Bo Nix. It was 58% of the time, which is the highest all season. It's been the highest I can ever remember recording under the current rules of doing it. And Nix had all kinds of time. He basically gave a lot of that back to the Ravens. He underperformed his opportunity set by 61 yards, which was the difference. And the Ravens were able to build up a lead right around the bridging halftime with a touchdown in each direction, and really were able to put the game away in that third quarter. So that it was no longer an issue. The snap count did not become the issue it was, but it didn't win this game on the pass rush, and they didn't even really try to embrace risk. And this is, I'll get into my point right away, is I think they need to optimize the pass rush by game situation and Burrow's success. I've got this as Orr versus Taylor. Basically, they're biased to start the game with a neutral game script. I think has to be embrace variance, go after the quarterback, use stunts, use simulated pressure is something Burrow beat pretty effectively last time, but use other off-ball blitzers to try and get home against Burrow, even if you leave yourself open to some plays. You're seeking variance. Defense needs it in general, but it's more important with a good QB opponent. So I think we'll see, numbers, stunts, off-ball blitzes to create that broader set of play outcomes. And the one thing I'll say about this is they need to adapt when the game script changes. You get up 3 scores, you can go ahead and go back to playing a softer defensive scheme, something that's probably more comfortable for Dean Pease, more like what he called as a coordinator. This is a game where I wish it wasn't Dean Pease whispering in Orr's ear. I wish it were either Martindale or Rex Ryan, because I think that's what they need in this game is a high octane, high risk defensive effort.
Yeah, and back to the point about the pass rush. I know at the trade deadline earlier today, Ravens were shopping for either a pass rusher or interior D line. One name I'm glad they didn't go after was Calais Campbell. Watching just some film on him, he seems to be on the ground a lot, not really the same player. So I'm glad we didn't put our necks out there for someone we know from prior experience just based on the name. And I don't know if that would have cost us a draft pick. Maybe you would have switched around. Either way, I think that was a good move to just stay pat and not feel like we're forced to make a move.
Campbell is one of the players that I was hot on. I thought he'd be a good choice. He's a temporary solution, but he does give you that extra interior pass rusher who can create problems and create some double teams. He certainly is a guy who's played a ton of career snaps and has managed with a high workload throughout his career. In fact, in the 5 years before he came to Baltimore, and we're a few years removed from that, I understand, he had 5 consecutive years where he'd played between 77 and 80% of the snaps. So just amazing consistency. The Ravens reduced his workload. They got real value out of Campbell in his time in Baltimore. I think it would be nice to see him here again. And, I think at this point, he's got to be getting kind of desperate to get a ring.
Yep.
This would be an excellent place to do it. And it may even be that Miami gives him a chance to leave.
And releases him.
Yeah, releases him sometime before the end of the year, like a Suggs kind of a thing, once they're out of playoff contention entirely. Unfortunately, then the Ravens won't be necessarily first in line to get him. So
yeah, I mean,
we'll see about this. But right now, the Ravens, having only 4 defensive linemen to play this week against Cincinnati, I'd be very hot on getting Calais Campbell, even if it's just for one game for a 7th round pick. Obviously they're going to get more than that out of him for the rest of the season, but that alone would have potentially been worth it for a critical divisional game like this. If they end up splitting against the Steelers, this division record is going to be very important. They've already got a loss to the Browns.
Yes.
So they can't afford a loss to the Bengals or a loss to the Browns in the second game, and have a reasonable hope of still beating out the Steelers for the division in the case it's tied and they split with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think I back to your point about Orr and Taylor, the off-ball blitzes with Burrow. I think back to what we observed the Tampa Bay Bucks do, of being a little bit off the line of scrimmage and maybe showing like a mud blitz, kind of just hovering around the line, but giving yourself the ability to not get washed. I think this game will probably see more of that, because last game Burrow was able to just identify and get the ball.
This holiday season, find the perfect gift and spark something special with Uncommon Goods. No need to stress. Uncommon Goods makes shopping easy with hand-picked, unique gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Think gifts that bring out the smiles, the laughter, and that, yes, it's exactly what I wanted moment. They scour the globe for one-of-a-kind, handmade, remarkable items, and they always seem to know the perfect gift. I got these Camden Yards drinking glasses on it that have a nice etch of Oriole Park and the skyline around it. Check out their new officially licensed NFL collection for you Raven fans. When you shop Uncommon Goods, you're supporting small businesses and independent artists. Many of the products are made in small batches, so make sure to get yours before they sell out. With meaningful gifts from personalized items to special finds for kids, sports fans, and book lovers, Uncommon Goods has something for everyone. Plus, for every purchase, they donate $1 to a nonprofit. Over $3 million donated so far. To get your 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ravens. That's uncommongoods.com/ravens for 15% off. Hurry, this deal won't last. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary.
Out immediately. I think trying to confuse him a little more is definitely going to be. I don't know what you can do in the simulated pressure world that he hasn't seen already, but there's maybe different nuances that we can show. Maybe like roll the safety down and then just bring him back out. Like we're going to go back down to back like too high, bring it down, and then bail out to go back to cover two. Just make him think like that all game, and it could be a big difference in what they show.
You know, Burrow has seen a lot in his career, and he's a good processor. One of the things that makes them so difficult for the Ravens is not just Jamar Chase, it's the fact that he has multiple target options. And in particular, when you've got a slant option on either side or a potential hot read on either side, and you know it, you can kind of read it in advance. It's can't give it away early. And one of the nice things about this is it looks like, and it's not 100% sure yet by any stretch, but it looks like T. Higgins might not play. So if he doesn't play, that takes away a big weapon they have. Particularly, he's a Stevens beater because he's a big-bodied back shoulder receiver. That is a guy that it was particularly effective against the Ravens.
Yep. And so to piggyback off your point, my second matchup is the Ravens cornerbacks versus the Bengals wide receivers specifically. They have a good developing core. They're led by Jamar Chase. Just mentioned no T. Higgins this week, but another formidable receiver, Burton, Yoshi Vosh. These players have emerged in the 11 personnel heavy offense that Zach Taylor runs. I think the main thing we need to do is get physical with them early and don't let Joe Burrow get into rhythm passing. Because once he gets to that point, then we're going to get into trouble, because it's 1, 2, 3, let it go, 5-step drop, let it go. A guy like Joe Burrow feeds off that energy. So got to make him wait a half a second later than he's used to, try and get the pass rush to marry with the pass coverage. And I think the corner specifically, will have a better day than we've seen in the past against the Bengals.
Kind of critical for those defensive linemen too to get their hands up, to prevent some of those things. Because obviously you're not going to win your one-on-one matchup necessarily. You need to get your hands up if you're in the if you're opposite a guard or a tackle, potentially to try and knock a pass down. But it's even more important for the interior guys to prevent those hot reads coming over the middle. All right. I mean, it's not like I don't agree with your cornerback versus receiver point. I think it's excellent, but I'm gonna pick on some other key players that have to basically figure out Burrow in this game. And the three are Simpson, Hamilton, and Washington. I think they need a little bit different in terms of contributions from each of them. So I'll talk about what each of them does that I think is particularly important against the Bengals in this thing. And the Ravens, I don't know for sure whether they're going to stick with the committed nickel, which was effective last week and kept Simpson on the field against the Broncos. They certainly could do that. Or they could go back to having more Hamilton at dime now that they have additional options in the slot. And it looks like they're probably going to start the game comfortable with Ardarius Washington and Williams on the back end. So I think we will see a full game. Okay, when I say a full game, like a full Geno Stone game of playing strong safety for Ardarius Washington. I don't think he's going to come up and play nickel in this game, at least not unless Mollett gets hurt. I think Mollett or Humphrey will be the nickel in this game, and it probably would still be Humphrey on the outside playing a rotational amount with Wiggins. And on the right side was the Ravens' big weakness is Stevens, who's had, frankly, a pretty lousy year so far, has been really exploited in terms of back shoulder throws and is giving up a lot of yards per target. Somehow he's got to have a better game here. But let's talk about the big three here, because Simpson is the first. He needs to help control the run in terms of what he does. He needs to find a way to contribute versus the pass. Simpson has been one of the guys who's been able to get his hand on a couple balls, including two from Mahomes in week 1. Would like to see that. And he needs to close windows on Burrows, whether that means laterally, because they run a lot of slants. I want, Simpson moving laterally is a great defense for that. Even if you don't know exactly what's coming, Simpson moving laterally can really help you get in the path of a thrown football in those cases. And he also needs to drag the seam effectively. Burrow's pretty good at throwing over a seam dragger. He's pretty good on up and down balls with touch. Where he's not as good is throwing deep, where arm strength is really required to snap a ball in there in a fairly tight window between level 2 and 3. That's just not exactly who he is. Not the greatest arm strength quarterback, and for that reason, some of these too high looks will look a little difficult for him. But I don't want to go to the rest of players until I give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, sure. So just based off how you want to go about it, sounds like you're expecting Eddie Jackson to be another healthy scratch.
He may be active and playing special teams and being a backup. I'm not really sure. Is Bo Braid really a player you want to take a chance on having to be out there, or even Sanusi Kane over Jackson? I don't know that that's true, but I think if he's healthy, go ahead, play him, put him on special teams, and maybe he can help you there. And then if you absolutely need a back end safety, you end up having to go back to him if something were to happen to Washington or Williams, say.
That's fair. Okay. Well, based off that, I do agree. I think he does bring some value, but not too much that we've observed on the defensive side. I think someone that I will look for is Washington. I think he had the good interception on the first drive last week, kind of settled the defense in. Looking for him to maybe capitalize more on those opportunities he had earlier in the year, in position to intercept the ball. This week, can we continue to see him have a robber mentality, read the quarterback, and also take the key points?
Washington's one of my 3 guys. I said exactly. Take away routes as robber, read intentions well, and take good angles to the receiver and the ball carrier. Going to be very important that the Ravens don't have a big missed tackle game against the Bengals this week. It's always a potential risk when you've got Jamar Chase and whatnot who can make you miss in multiple ways. But Washington is one of the key guys to come up and find the ball carrier quickly. It means he has to trigger downhill quickly, and it probably means you're taking some chances on the back end of something going wrong, about him taking, basically picking up the wrong route and leaving somebody uncovered deep. That might happen in this game. Closer mentality, get over it and move on would be what I'd say about that. The other player that I think is very key, always is in games against the Bengals, is Hamilton.
Yep.
He'll play, I would assume, lots of big nickel in this game because Burrow has a penchant for getting rid of the ball quickly, throwing it to the outside, and Hamilton is one of the sure tacklers that the Ravens have. They have the best tackling team in the NFL, but Hamilton is probably the best single tackler on the team. Roquan and Simpson have both been very good, but I think Hamilton, even though his missed tackle rate's a little higher, makes more spectacular tackles and I would term him the best tackler on the team. He needs to be a run stopper because they're going to try and be stopping the run with 6 in the box.
Yep.
The Bengals don't have much to try and get a ground game going, so that should work, could work. And he needs to continue to control the strong side. So when they want to run their wide receiver screens, he's got to be right there to create chaos, to shed blocks very quickly, to get to the ball carrier, to reduce the ball carrier's options in terms of moving left or right, and to have, if he doesn't make the tackle himself, which he very often does, then at least restrict the paths that the ball carrier can take so others can key off that and make tackles.
It's honestly a joy to watch Kyle Hamilton play. I think something we really do take for granted, the range, the aggressiveness, the IQ on the field, it's just all there. It's disappointing he couldn't make that play against the Browns. I mean, that probably would have put him in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year if he's able to make that play and just continue this positive trend of play. He had a rough start to the year, really starting to come on as we know he can coming into the later half of the year, and I'm just ready to continue to see him dominate on the defensive side.
Yeah, me too. He's one of the players I really enjoy watching play, and my last jersey purchase, in fact, a Hamilton jersey that people may have seen in a hashtag Ravenslock post I've made. Frazier, always a lot of fun doing the show with you. Where can people talk to you, talk football with you online?
You guys can reach me at Twitter/X at F_Rave8. That's F_RAVE8.
All right. Outstanding. If you want to support the show, 2 things you can do. Write us a 50-word 5-star review. We always love that. Also, make use of hashtag Film Study Mailbag. We'll take your questions. Love to hear some matchup questions come out, some things we can talk. Frazier and I can chew over. We got a good number for Friday Morning GM. We got always good numbers for offense and defense show. But if you have a specific matchup you're wondering about for the next game, got a while before that Steelers game, toss those out there, and I'll try and save those for the matchup show with Frazier, and we'll enjoy those. For Frazier Tapar, this is Ken McCusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next time on Matchups.